Okay, here we go. I think we're going to go soon. Let's see. All right. So it says we're live. So we're live. And my name is Mew. And I'm so glad to be talking to Sarah today. Sarah, are you muted?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had just talked earlier today, just a few hours ago, and I just found your information super informative because to me, self-care is the utmost importance. Nothing is more important than self-care. The day doesn't work without self-care, and it's great to have a therapist. And not only a therapist, but you're a craniosacral therapist, right?
A craniosacral therapist. Yes.
Okay, I got the
right
for now. Okay, so welcome. And like we had talked about self-care and how important it is. For me, I find that one of the first thing I do in the morning is that I go for a walk. And if I don't do that, there's something in my body, my brain, it's like there's like an extra weight that I have to carry if I do not do that walk. It's only 30 minutes. So can you explain to me why I need to do that?
Yes. So besides being a technique certified craniosacral therapist with the Upledge Institute, I've also been an occupational therapist for 25 years, working with kids with sensory processing issues. So I know a lot about how your brain works to keep your body calm. And so when you're going for your walk, that is rhythmic movement. And rhythmic movement stimulates the part of your brain called your cerebellum. And your cerebellum is one of the major processing and integration areas of your brain. And it helps process your gravitational sense. It helps process your proprioception, which is your body's ability to sense where you are, where your arm is, where your leg is without looking at it.
Okay.
It helps you process where you are in space, and then it helps you process all of those, your tactile input, your touch, your sight, your hearing, all of that. So it's helping to integrate that. And when you're stimulating that part of your brain through rhythmic movement and the rhythmic movement of walking, especially a quick walk, that actually stimulates your cerebellum. And there is actually a study done a few years ago. There was a young man who was born without a cerebellum, and he's been studied throughout his life, and he's in his 20s now. And so one of the things that they've also found about the cerebellum, because we have called that the secondary motor cortex of the brain, but it actually has more functions than that, and it actually creates your ability to do, or supports your ability to do abstract thinking as well.
Okay.
So this young man without the brain has really struggled with abstract thinking and stays in that concrete brain as well. So doing that rhythmic movement, that daily routine, whatever it is for you, supports you on multiple levels.
So when you say abstract thinking, it's like helps with the creativity. Is that what you mean?
Right. It's creativity, but also the ability to see the bigger picture and to see the relationship between things.
Okay. And then so I also notice in myself that if not only just walking is good, but I find that I like to look at gardens and how people decorate their homes, or the outside, of course, and how they plant things has really like slowed things down for me. It reduces my anxiety level. So what's the science behind that?
Okay, so there are a number of things there. Looking at anything green, or anything alive, actually, so everything on our planet has a vibration. And so when you are around plants, grass, trees, and you're spending your energy attending to those, you're actually attending also, your body is pulling in the vibration. So if you think about our bodies, women are typically 78 to 80% water. Men are more closer to 75% water, which may be why women are more intuitive. And so, and we're vibrating, right? We've got all these vibrations going on in our body. And so our heart is creating a rhythm. Our craniosacral, our cerebral spinal fluid is pumping into our brain, and that's creating a more subtle movement. Our breath creates a movement. But everything, every thought has a vibration, every emotion has a vibration, and then plants themselves all have vibrations. So as you're attending to that, it's actually grounding you. And on a spiritual level, if you have a spiritual practice like in yoga or meditation, part of that practice is to ground yourself to the earth. And you can do that through the practice of gardening, or even just paying attention to plants. I like to go, I have 12 trees on my property, and I'll walk by and I'll put my hand on each of the trees and just feel in and just check in with them. Do they need water? Do they not? And I can get a sense of, are they thirsty or not? And I can feel that through the vibration coming off the tree. And so, but that's a big part of your self-care, is remembering, is being grounded. And on a spiritual level, that's important because our souls came in to be here in this body on this planet at this time. And it's really important for us to remember that, because otherwise we get caught up in all the noise of our lives and forget about our divine path.
Hey, Stacy, thanks for commenting. So I had asked you this question before, and I feel like right now my life is pretty good. I don't have any real stressors. But there were times when it wasn't always this calm. And I find that the more stress I have, the more intensity my workout has to be. Like, I have to do taekwondo, and of course, I don't like hard work. Who wants hard work? But I know that hard work from the strenuous exercise, the sweating and all that stuff, really helps me clear my mind. So you had talked about rhythmic motion before. So why is like the intensity of the workout more helps me to clear?
Right. And so if you think about the level of stress that you're feeling, right? And so stress is your perception. There's what's resonating in you that is, I'm not sure, you've gone, I don't know if you're frozen, but I'm going to just keep talking, and hopefully this is still
I can
going.
hear you.
Let's see.
I can hear you still. So.
Are you there? Okay. You were frozen, but now you're not frozen. So I'm going to go ahead and talk. So so a given event will be stressful to one person and not stressful to another person, depending on how they're perceiving that event, and whether their body has the capacity to allow that. If you think about an event, and we're going to just do something subtle, right? Like your child fell down and bumped their knee, and now they have a bleeding knee, right? And so that event, if you have capacity, if you're doing your self-care, that can just flow through you, and you can continue on your day and care for your child. But if you are in that state of over energy, and we talked about this a little bit this morning before this talk, about when you're in a state of over energy, you're pulling from your reserves instead of coming from a place of capacity. And so when you're in that over energy state and you don't have those reserves, then that child, your child, who you love and are, are for the most part a good mother too, when
Oh,
they
thank you.
bump their knee, I can tell you're a good mother, but when they bump their knee, and I'm saying this to everybody out there, right? When you have that very strong emotional reaction, and we all have this when we lose our capacity, where all of a sudden we'll like blame our child, and these words will come out of our mouth like, "Oh, I can't believe you fell," right? And then you're like going into blame, or instead of instead of being supportive, or you have this strong emotional reaction of, oh no, not again, this happened again, and I've got all these things to do and blah blah blah, right? And you kind of go into that anxious part of your brain.
Mhm.
And so this has to do with, and this is why that self-care is so important, because you want to be in a place of capacity where you can be resilient and you can respond fluidly instead of getting stuck. And so if you think about a wall, if a very hard wall, if there's vibrations coming in, it actually uh, it'll actually break down the cement of the wall over time. But if you have a softer wall, the vibrations will flow through the wall. And just like us, if we do our self-care work, and that involves clearing our mental blocks, clearing our physical blocks, clearing our emotional blocks, and clearing our archetypal
Mhm.
blocks, then that actually allows these events to flow through our body, and we're able to integrate them, and we don't end up causing um, uh, in craniosacral, we talk about energy cysts. And so if you have an event, whether it's a small event like your child injuring
Mhm.
themselves, and when your child injures themselves as a mother, that for
Right.
most of us, it brings up guilt, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, I wasn't there to protect my child. But any
Yeah.
event, if you can't integrate it, if you can't let it flow through and just let it integrate into your body and release it, your body actually creates these physical protein walls, and you start holding these patterns in your body over time. And then over time, when you get into your 40s or so, you start finding that you have food sensitivities, and you start having autoimmune disorders, and you start having all of these illnesses because it's like the layer of the onion, and you've got these wounds on top of wounds on top of wounds that you haven't been processing. And so part of your daily self-care is to tune in to what's going on in your body and let things process and shift out.
Okay. And then okay, I just want to make sure I understand it. It's so the self-care makes me more able to absorb what unexpected, and I can just, bounce back easier and let things flow through me.
Right,
And if
right.
I don't, it just builds up until, terminal illness comes along.
Right.
Um,
And you were talking about the intensity piece.
yeah.
And so, um, and I just read, I was born in 1970. So I grew up watching, certain TV shows like Friends and whatnot. And there's these episodes where they go to a restaurant and everyone starts throwing dishes, right? And they're like getting out their angst by throwing these dishes.
Mhm.
And so this concept has been around for a long time,
Mhm.
and so you can, if you're having a lot of stress or feeling a lot of stress, and remember that stress is your internal perception of what's going on around you,
Internal
then
perception. Mhm.
going for a run instead of going for a walk might be more appropriate. But the other thing that you can do is, instead of going bigger with your movements, you can try and go smaller. And so when you're experiencing stress, it's often because you're being triggered
Yeah.
by a core wound. And so as women, we are often told from childhood on that our self-worth is based on our ability to serve others. And so if you think about self-worth, this is a big thing for a lot of women,
Right.
right? So if you just and so one of the things that I do is my daily self-care is I tune into the positive affirmations that I need for the day. So for everyone watching this, just I want you to say to yourself, I am worthy.
I am worthy. And so that's the next question I want to ask you is, a lot of us know about, especially adults now, especially 30, 40s, we all know about affirmation, yet we're constantly reaffirming ourselves and it doesn't stick. Like, what's going on?
Right. So our nervous system is comprised of 5% of our nervous system is our conscious mind, right? And our conscious mind is what we know, and what we know we don't know, right? So
Oh
this is
yeah.
the stuff in our mind that we know or we're thinking, right? And then the other 95% of our nervous system is our non-conscious mind. And so that, for the most part, is our cellular memory. And so these are things we know, but we don't consciously know we know. So if you say the affirmation, um, I am a funny person, for
Hmm.
and you're saying to yourself, okay, I can study jokes, I can practice this and whatnot, right? But if your body is carrying cellular memories of a time when you tried to be funny and your peers really ostracized you, and you're carrying that memory in your body, you're never going to be authentically funny because it's not a safe thing for you to do. And
Oh,
so this is why building these connections between your conscious mind and your non-conscious, your cellular memory, is so important as part of your self-care. And that a big chunk of that is to tune in. And just like the more stress you're under, you can physically go bigger to help you with that. You can also tune in smaller. And so the smaller you go, the more helpful things can be. So if you think about worth, and so worth is a vibration like everything, and just tune into the word worth and
hmm.
see if you can feel that vibration. And then
Okay.
see if you can say, I am worthy in my cells.
Worthy in myself to the core. Got it. And what do you mean by like going smaller? Like, because I always thought the more intense things are, the more, but you said the more I have to work out, but maybe you said smaller. So that was like a new concept to me.
Right. And so there's this idea of quantum physics,
Hmm.
right? And in quantum physics, we're vibrating, our cells are vibrating. And then within our cells, there's the mitochondria that have the RNA, there's the nucleus, and all of those things are vibrating too. And then if you get smaller and smaller and smaller on a quantum physics level, you have string theory. And so string theory is this idea that there are strings that are popping in and out. And if you go smaller than that, there's something called quarks. And so quarks are these, again, it's the possibility or probability of this element being in a certain place at a certain time. And if
Okay.
you go even smaller than that, you get to the place of possibility. And so the
Okay.
place of possibility allows you to shift your timeline. And
Okay.
so if you had, for many of us, we were born into families that didn't see us, didn't see the beauty of who we are.
Right.
And so you can actually go back in your timeline to the time of conception, the time right before conception, the time of birth, and you can use your affirmation, I am worthy, I am worthy, and go back to that point of potentiality and reset
Right.
your body's memory of that that construct, that program that has been taught to you that your worth doesn't come from your value, doesn't come from your state of being, but rather your value and your worth is on what you do.
Okay. Yeah, that's I'm glad about the what you do. How you see yourself is how you act. And so like in coaching, as you know, we try to say, how do you want to be? And then you act on how you want to be. That makes sense. But sometimes just acting is not enough because I guess it's at our cellular level that's probably at, birth, conception, and whatnot. And I know this is how you make your money. Can you just give us a sneak peek on like what is involved in having that 95% affirmation work?
Yes. So I have a free workshop coming up called 5 Keys to Keeping Calm, and I talk in more detail about how to integrate your mental blocks, your emotional blocks, your physical blocks, and your archetypal blocks, and through somatic processing. So tuning into your body. And so I'll show you. So a physical thing that you can do is we have primitive reflexes that are related to your rest and relaxation reserves. And these are part of the parasympathetic nervous system. And so if you just tune into your hand right now and allow it to open, and just allow it to open on its own speed, whatever speed your hand wants to open. And so now we're going to tune into the brainstem level of your brain, and you have this pattern, and this is related to, there's a primitive reflex called the Babkin Parlamento reflex. And so it's related to the amount of effort you need to do things, and that idea that you're grasping for things but not ever achieving them, that they're not providing you nurturance. And so go ahead and close your hand a little bit, just allow it to close just a little bit, and just feel as your hand closes how your jaw gets a little tenser and your eyes get a little tenser. Do you feel that?
I felt the jaw first.
Yeah, the jaw, and then the eyes are a little bit more subtle, but that eye strain can really, it's part of this reflex as well. And so go ahead and allow your hand to open again.
Hello?
Oh
yeah, I heard you. I heard some background music.
So allow your hand to open again. And this time, now that we have our baseline, I want you to, with your intention, see if you can slow down the opening movement of your hand and allow it to be even smaller, even slower. And I want you to still be able to feel, you need to be able to perceive that your hand is opening, but you're just slowing it down. And as you slow it down, notice how your fascia starts relaxing.
What is relaxing?
Your fascia. So your fascia covers all of, it's your connective tissue. And so you'll feel your jaw relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
You'll feel your eyes relaxing. I'm feeling I tend to hold a lot of strain in my shoulders and my neck. So I'm feeling that relaxing.
Feeling it in my chest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's a very simple way, and this is why somatic work is so important, and somatic meaning the body, and building those connections between your non-conscious and your conscious, is that once you are aware of these patterns, you can shift the pattern by creating change.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for the exercise. And then, so let's talk about why is really important, like the cost of not focusing on self-care. I know in the past, like I grew up like Asian, we're meant to serve others. Being selfish is not a good thing. And I'm the oldest too, and a girl in an Asian family. So you can imagine that, from birth, I was like, do this, do that, and whatnot. And I know for myself, when I used to push what I needed and put myself last, like I would get like the little illness, like get a cold, and I'm just sick for 6 weeks. Or like I've never known anybody else except me with poison ivy. I get poison ivy and I'm in bed for 2 weeks. So that's a cost of self-care. What do you have to say about that for the short term?
Right. So part of that is being in that state of over energy. Mm-hmm. And so when you have, and you had mentioned that, you were a computer consultant for these billion-dollar companies, mm-hmm. right? And so you, before you became a mother, had this very high-stress job. And I grew up in Toronto, and Toronto has, 5 million people in now, and about 25% of those are Asian. So most of my high school was Asian. So I grew up in that culture too, in many regards, where you have to get multiple degrees, and you have to go to the best university, and you have to go, you have to be successful. And all of that is coming from this program. And we're being programmed that we need, like, we have to achieve these things, which is doing instead of being. And mm-hmm. I was talking to a woman, one of my clients on Wednesday, and she recently got a new job, and she is being, she was hired, and they told her that she was being hired, and she was going to become they want her to be a director in their company. Mm-hmm. And she accepted the job knowing that it was going to move her forward in her career path. And she'd be making quite a bit of money, but it wasn't her. What she came to realize, that it wasn't her divine path. And she described, and I thought it was this beautiful analogy of seeing this river of obligations, and how she gets like stuck in this river of obligations where she feels like she has to be contributing to her family. She feels like she has to be achieving these milestones. And, because part of that in her family, her siblings all work for these billion-dollar companies and have high career, they're very successful at what they do, right? And she's this amazing woman as well. And she took this job, and one of the things that I supported her with is feeling the difference between being in that river of obligation versus being on your divine path. And when you're on your divine
path, oh my gosh, something's going on. Somebody's laptop is going crazy. Do you hear the music and the voice in the background? Okay, continue.
Okay, I don't know. Okay. There is some music somewhere.
Oh, is it? I'm like, oh, is it on my
end? Anyway, there is. I think one of my neighbors is playing a radio. I can hear it.
I thought it was something bad.
No, I don't. But I don't know if that's what you can hear.
Okay.
What was I going to say? Anyway, so what she realized is she felt somatically what it felt to be on your divine path. And let's just visualize that. Let's just feel that right now. So if you're feeling yourself safe, in alignment with your body, mind, and spirit, and taking a step onto your divine path. And just feel the ease in your body as you do that. Mm-hmm. And for some people, it might be too much of a stretch to actually step on their divine path. They can just notice that they have the intention to move towards their divine path. and feel in your body, what does that feel like? And then step over to that river of obligations. The river of obligations is everything we've been told by others that we're supposed to be doing.
I don't like it.
Yeah, right? It's murky, it's dense, it's dark.
It's
right?
like you told me this stuff on it, and I was like, I could feel like resistance. I'm like, I gotta do it. Push myself. Like I had to mentally push myself.
Right.
And
but wait. Before you ask another question, let's get back onto the divine path so you can feel. So we don't want to leave our body.
Fine.
We don't want to leave our body feeling that density. So just take a moment to step back on your divine path, because we always want to leave our body with that higher vibrational feeling.
Okay.
So close your eyes for a second and feel that divine path.
So light.
Right. It's light and easy. And then just take a moment to surround yourself with the glittering white light that is grace. Right? Grace is the combination of unconditional love and forgiveness. And as you surround yourself with that sparkling white light of grace, just let go all of those times when you've stepped away from your divine path because someone's told you you're supposed to be doing something else. And just let that go from your body, let it release. And then come back and feel yourself on your divine path and feel how that ease, that light has just expanded to another level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I just want to, we had, when we talked before, and we didn't mention it during this conversation, so I want to bring up, it was definitely stressful when I was turning projects around. Nobody wants to start off with a project that's failing when they're spending $1 million on the project. But you said that being a mom is much harder, and we did some digging, and what I came up with was, work in the computer world was challenging, stressful, but it's way more stressful as a mom. And it really sunk in when I was able to name it as, I'm leaving a blueprint behind that lasts forever. And I was like, oh my gosh, and now I understand why people say mother's work is the hardest.
Yeah.
So I just want to bring that to the audience because we had talked about it before.
Yeah.
And then my last question is, you had mentioned before that women, especially in their 40s, start developing long-term health problems when they're not focusing on their self-care. And I can totally attest to that. I wasn't really paying attention to my body and addressing what I needed to have done. And eventually my body just gave in. I developed hyperthyroidism, and I am on the fortunate side in the sense that I didn't work for 2 years to focus on my health. I went organic, took a lot of supplements, did a lot of trial and error. Like I did a lot of research online. Nobody, told me the exact thing. And so I had to remove gluten, restricted my alcohol, remove caffeine, take anything GMO away from my diet, remove sugar. GMO is like rice, soy, and a lot of other stuff. And then after that 2 years, I also had to go to coaching school and spent, another tens of thousands of dollars to work on myself to release. And like now I feel a lot healthier and I can bounce through. Like when people get a cold, I'm like, okay, you get a cold. And I even think I actually had the coronavirus in the middle of February because like what's circling around in San Diego, people are saying this year's flu season is so rough, it's so bad. And I had like a fever for a whole week. But I mean, I was really sick for 2 weeks and got out of it. And I really attest to like me having been able to focus on my well-being. So when something does happen, I can like come out of it much better than most. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I didn't think I could be this healthy. So could you just explain the science behind not focusing on the long-term health benefit of self-care?
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things that makes you a great coach too is that you invested, you committed in yourself, you made that commitment to you, and you did your work, right?
Yeah.
And you did, and that cost you tens of thousands of dollars to
I
do that.
know. And
And
years.
and right. And you mentioned that you had hypothyroidism and now you're healthy and you look healthy. You look really vibrant, right? And
Yeah.
so as a coach, that journey that you went through and that learning of how to be healthy is what is going to make you a great coach for your clients that come to you.
Right.
So the same thing, and I'm like don't look quite as healthy as you do. I'm a little bit older, but I also had this longer health journey where um, I wasn't completely taking care of myself, and I was in that over energy, doing, doing, doing. I have 2 master's degrees. I'm working on a PhD. I have 2 children, um, and and one of the things that happened that made me really stop and slow down and really dive deep is I developed rheumatoid arthritis, and that which I have now cleared. I'm off my medication. My inflammation is completely gone. I can even have coffee now without inflammation, and a little bit of alcohol. The wine is still off the table, um, but but as you do your work, then that allows you to get healthier and healthier and healthier, and you'll have more energy. And so there was a time about 5 years ago when I was working and I didn't actually have the diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, but I would drive. I live in New Mexico, and I would drive 2 hours and work with the Native American community in Grants, which is it's right by the Navajo Nation. And the Navajo Nation is in the news a lot right now because of there's been a big outbreak there of the coronavirus. And then I would drive back, but then I wouldn't be able to move for a whole day because I had so much inflammation in my neck. And so we had talked about going down to that quantum level. And the thing that cured me of my rheumatoid arthritis was actually infusing self-worth into my body all the way down on the quantum level to those spaces of potentiality between matter. And I was able to do that as a craniosacral therapist. As you go higher and higher with the training, you'll spend 5 days and you're in a group and people will you have 5 other therapists working on you as you're going through your process. And so I was able to go really, really deep with that. But that affirmation down on the very, very smallest level is what ended up shifting my rheumatoid arthritis. And I forget what your question was, but I think when you're starting this journey, you're looking for somebody who's been through it, right? So the fact that you have switched from this high stress, high profile job to being a coach because of some of your health issues, And
Right.
that's going to allow you to support people on a very, very deep way. And I'm super excited for your coaching business. You're going to do
Oh,
a
thank
great
you.
job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also have to say that I was actually re- referred to a surgeon who was supposed to remove my thyroid. So I still have my thyroid. Didn't take any medication, just went completely holistic.
Mhm.
Balancing my diet, exercise, and just cleansing my mind and my body and stuff like that. So that kind of thing helps. And if I just can only imagine if I actually went through surgery, I would have had to take medication for the rest of my life.
Right, right. And so if you think about that somatic listening that we did when you were on your divine path versus in that river of obligation and that murkiness, you can use that in your life to help you know who is the right coach for me, who is the right therapist for me, what's the right supplement for me, right? Because what food is healthy for me to eat or what food is not healthy for me to eat. And so being in the now, being present in your body,
Mhm.
you can, and food is actually one of the easiest things to have get that somatic connection to. Just be aware that your your brainstem will tell you whether a food will bring you energy or not. Your
Yeah.
emotions override your brainstem. So if you're looking at that chocolate chip cookie and saying, I would really love to eat that chocolate chip cookie, your body is going to say yes, even if it's going to make you ill,
Mm.
right? And your mind loves to negotiate, right? And your mind can override your emotions, can override your brainstem. And your mind can say, oh, well, what happens if I just eat half the cookie? Is that going to be okay, right? It's a negotiator.
Yes.
And sometimes it might be a yes, and sometimes it might be a no. And so, but if you really want to get very clear messages of whether or not a food is going to bring you energy or not, you want to be working at the brainstem level. And I talk a little bit more about that in my workshop, the 5 keys to keep.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, great. I don't have any more questions. I thank you so much for your time, Sarah. And I is there anything else you want to say before I stop the stream? Okay. I'm going to stop it now.